if we are able to implement it 100%, I think I would start counting India among the developed countries there itself, because it is going to bring out huge paradigm shift in our curriculum, in our thought process, in our culture, and it is going to make our students not only industry ready, but we would have job creators rather than job seekers.
I think NEP is our third national policy on higher education. It came out almost after 34 years, the last policy in 80s. So there was a need definitely, because we need to revamp, because things are changing and day by day the higher education landscape is, I will focus only on the higher education because I am from the higher education. So the landscape is changing.
The National Education Policy is truly a transformative document. Incidentally, the first education policy did not come up till 1968. 1968 was the first time when an education policy was drafted, right?
I think NEP 2020 has been a fresh breath of air in the whole education sector. It has got a lot of, it's a very wide document, first of all, so it's pretty much impossible in 2 years, in which 1 year was a pandemic and everything was closed down, to get implemented. I think to start with, I would say the ideology behind the whole document is very fresh, very new, and something which is very, very required in both school and the higher education.
However, when we talk about its implementation, I think most of the universities and schools, like if I talk of my own university, we have started implementing it.
So this policy was definitely needed. It came out with a buzz in this country, and it suggested a lot of renovation and lot of suggestions, like in a more holistic approach, interdisciplinary approach of higher education, mixing up the research with the higher education in a very proper manner. Lot of student-centric policies, in the course structure, multiple exit entry, all these things has been suggested in the NEP. Lot of suggestions in the governance also of the higher education.
Because what happened was, in India, research and universities were separated. Research happened in institutes, and universities turned into just teaching places. And that has been detrimental in how innovation takes place, how even people start thinking about research and education. National education policy undoes that, right? So national education policy intends to bring research back into universities.
It came out in 2020. Now I think the lot of departments, higher education departments, they are working onto it, and they are now suggesting a lot of regulatory and framework for implementing the strategy. Few have definitely came up, but there are lot needs to grow. I mean, this NEP, all these regulations, suggestions will come within next, I think it will take at least 5 to 7 years to come up.
I think NEP 2020 has many good features, and slowly it may take some time, but universities will adopt. It is more open to testing different ideas, involving people from other institutions or outside India. And with this online mode, I feel this is a very welcome thing, that we can have faculty or student from outside India also. So the character of our universities will change over a period of time.
First of all, one of the schemes where it is exit options are there. They have been implemented from last year itself, and we have been finding that our students are very happy with it, because many times it so happens that owing to some emergency medical situation, student is not able to continue, and that affects his family, his own life, his own career. Now, this policy, this exit option which is available, encourages student to take a break in between. It helps a student, primarily supports a student by that he can take a break in between, and then he can continue his education further. Another thing is that where we are giving the student liberty of choosing from long list of courses. So those have been easily implemented in our university based on various electives that we have. Also inculcating the Indian knowledge culture. That is very much required.
The other aspect, I think, which is fantastic about the national education policy is bringing multidisciplinarity across the board. In India, what has happened is, again, very focused institutes and universities have cropped up, right? Colleges which teach only engineering or colleges which teach only management.
There have been specializations a lot more taking place, and students opting for it because if they feel that there is one aspect wherein they want to lay in their emphasis, then they probably go in for courses, and universities who are giving them the faculty as well as required resources to grow into that avenue.
Right. So even to become a very good engineer who can solve great problems, you need variety of perspectives, right? And therefore, this multidisciplinarity that is being proposed in the new education policy is going to be transformational.
A new possibility or new degree kind of thing has been introduced, where the chemistry students can also take some classes from business, from MBA. So this means that a chemistry student will have some exposure how to do a business. So you can have your major degree in some course, but that also allows you to do courses of other discipline, other subjects. So I think your thinking and exposure will increase, and you may be better placed to go for some employment opportunities, I would say.
Most of the universities also, I'm seeing, they have started. But if we see the journey of past 2 years, maybe owing to this global pandemic situation that we have been in, it has not reached to the expectations which we were hoping for. But I can still say that we have started implementing. We are in all the complete system as of what knowledge and information I have, to the best of my knowledge. We are in a nascent stage. We need to now expedite from here so that in the coming 2 years, we should be able to implement at least 75 to 80% of it. And that is the time when we would start seeing the outcome and the results.
A country like India, one of the reasons this policy is taking some time for implementation is that you need to discuss with all the stakeholders for the implementation, right? It's not like that from the upper hold you are suggesting something, and we have a diverse country, very diverse country. So which is possible in the IITs may not be possible in a very remote state-aided universities. That's one of the biggest challenge I think this policy is facing, and announcing a policy and implement it is absolutely two different things. When the implementation comes, the devil's lies in the details. So that's the phase it's going up. If you ask me what is the problem in the implementation of this policy, starting from our independent, we always rely on the policy borrowing kind of concept. If there is a very nice, fantastic policy in US and UK, let's bring it, whether it is education, health. But, policy implementation does not work like that.
As you rightly pointed out, it's one thing that, okay, we have a document, but the other thing is what's actually happening and how it's being implemented. And that's where the challenge lies, right? It's been about 2 years since the National Education Policy has come out, but many of the enabling things are still not in place.
What is exactly lacking, I think, we don't invest so much focus in policy research, right? Directly policy borrowing is not going to help, because when the implementation comes, you need to understand the overall structure of your system, which are the small tweaking you need to do for implementation of this policy. So that is very much lacking on the past few years.
We, for example, talked about research being back into the university. But of course, for that, we need funding. Research is expensive. It cannot be done in isolation. But now, this funding is fragmented. It goes from Department of Science and Technology or Department of Biotechnology and so on and so forth. It was proposed to integrate into a national research foundation, and that has not yet happened, even though it was mentioned in a couple of budgets and so on, but that has not happened, right? So that is one of the things that has to be done very, very quickly.
But now I think government is focusing a lot on policy research, and hopefully these policy people, first of all, this policy researcher who will come up with a proper solution how to implement this policy will be a very, very crucial part for implementation. And then all the stakeholders, including the students, including the parents, including all the academic administrator of this country, and also the policies and including the politicians. So everybody should come into the same picture. They need to understand from this policy research point of view. There are a whole lot of an example in Asian countries, how China did it, how Vietnam is approaching on it. So there are a lot of case studies, but one of the most important thing is that you need to jump into it, you need to invest in this research, try to understand what is more applicable for you, and then go for the implementation.
I think the biggest issue with the document is the way the government is trying to roll out the whole policy. It's a very wide policy, and just to fulfill the commitment of implementing a policy cannot be pushed down the infrastructure, down the university, down the schools. So I think one clear area where the government really needs to work is to give a proper specific roadmap for institutions to follow. Everyone is following different parts, bits and pieces here and there, and it's like a jigsaw. I mean, you miss one part and everything just falls apart. I think, and the government also needs to set up those expectations, how we are going to, how the government is going to map it, because there's no mapping mechanism. So I think that's where the government really needs to work. I think every policy has good and bad sides. As far as I am concerned as an educationist, I think they are more positive than the negatives, and I think we should take the negatives in our stride, because every institution has a different scenario and how they are working, and sometimes those which are negative for one will be positive for another. So I think, but in a whole, the document is very well drafted, and it's a very, very positive step. And I think wherever there are difficulties, and it's again a policy document, it's a direction giving document. It's not mandatory you have to fulfill everything. So even if you fulfill 60 to 70% of what they are expecting, leaving apart that 30% which you don't like probably, I think still it's going to be very useful and very transformational for the education sector.